saving a vacation, preparing for a role with Jack Nicholson, and being chauffeured around by Conan O'Brien. John Candy was a beloved comedy icon of the 80s and 90s, but there's still so much about him that even his biggest fans may not have known until after he passed away. One of John Candy's most memorable film roles wasn't even supposed to exist. Early in Candy's career, he got the memorable part of a theme park security guard during a climactic sequence in the 1983 hit National Lampoon's Vacation. The whole movie's been building up to the Griswolds getting to Wally World, and when they finally think they've made it, Candy's guard ruins their day.
Sorry folks, park's closed. The moose out front should have told you.
Clark snaps, pulling a gun on Candy and holding him hostage as he forces him to take the Griswolds on all the park's rides.
Has your father ever killed anyone before?
Oh, just a dog. Oh, and my Aunt Edna.
Hey, you can't prove that, Rusty.
That scene, however, was a last-minute addition. In DVD commentary recorded after Candy's death, Vacation director Harold Ramis revealed that the initial ending featured the Griswolds confronting Wally World founder Ray Wally. But that flopped with audiences during test screenings. Ramis realized he'd screwed up by asking viewers to invest in the Griswolds' quest to get to Wally World, only to deny the payoff of actually making it there. Ramis asked screenwriter John Hughes to write the new scene, saying in the commentary, "We cast John Candy in the part of the security guard, and that became the end sequence. We edited it, we attached it to the film, we tested it, and then the test marketing went through the roof. The rethink kinda saved the picture in a big way." SCTV evolved from the Toronto company of Second City, from which Saturday Night Live creator Lorne Michaels plucked Dan Aykroyd and Gilda Radner for his cast. Meanwhile, Bill Murray and John Belushi cut their improv teeth in Second City's Chicago company. In fact, the SCTV actors and SNL stars knew each other well before the existence of either show, due to the cross-pollination between the Toronto and Chicago companies. When NBC executive Dick Ebersol took over SNL after the 1980-81 season, he sought out established comedy talent and was eager to poach John Candy and Catherine O'Hara from SCTV. As Doug Hill wrote in his 1986 book, Saturday Night, A Backstage History of Saturday Night Live, Candy, who friends say was mortified at being caught in the middle of the tug-of-war between Saturday Night and SCTV, retreated to his farm, refusing to answer his telephone. Candy ultimately remained with SCTV, and while he neither confirmed nor denied Hill's account before his death, his daughter, Jennifer Candy Sullivan, has insisted there was another reason underlying his decision to pass on the SNL offer. As she told Today in 2024, "The other thing about my dad is that he was the ultimate family guy. That's the reason he didn't want to do Saturday Night Live. He knew the lifestyle wasn't going to be healthy for him. He was smart in that way." Another memorable supporting role for Candy was Freddie, brother of protagonist Alan Bauer in the mermaid comedy Splash. In one memorable scene, the brothers play racquetball, with Candy's character hilariously out of breath. Years after Candy's death, Splash director Ron Howard recalled that the day that scene was shot, Candy showed up late and revealed he was drunk. Howard talked about Candy's explanation on the YouTube series Reunited Apart, with Candy placing the blame on Jack Nicholson and his insistence on buying him drinks.
And then I said, "I gotta go shoot." And he said, "You're gonna be all right, kid. Don't worry about it." And he kept buying me drinks. I never went to bed, Ron.
Appearing on The Rich Eisen Show, Splash producer Brian Grazer noted that Candy's combination of being drunk and hungover actually worked for the scene. In fact, when Candy served the ball and then beamed himself in the forehead, he nailed it in one take because he was too dazed to get out of the way. While it's difficult to imagine any other actor playing Rick Moranis' role in Ghostbusters, director Ivan Reitman revealed that the part was actually written specifically for Candy, whom he just worked with in Stripes. When Reitman sent Candy the Ghostbusters script, however, he couldn't quite wrap his head around the character.
John didn't get it. He kept saying, "Hey, well, maybe can I do him with a German accent?" And I was a little hesitant right away.
Candy ultimately decided to pass on the part, and Reitman quickly devised a plan B. In a Ghostbusters retrospective interview, Reitman said he sent the script to Rick Moranis the same day that Candy had turned it down, going on to say, "Rick called me like 2 hours after he got it, and he said, 'Please thank Candy for turning this down. This is amazing. I know what to do with this.'" SCTV was a seminal influence on Conan O'Brien, and he was a huge fan of John Candy. While attending Harvard, O'Brien had the opportunity to spend a day with Candy, showing him around the campus. Recalling that experience in an episode of his podcast, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, He confirmed that Candy lived up to all of his expectations, saying, "He was the John Candy that I was hoping he would be times 10. O'Brien also recalled that day when he appeared on The Howard Stern Show. O'Brien remembered that Candy was on the Pritikin diet at the time, and he'd been charged with keeping an eye on what Candy ate. That, however, went out the window when Candy pulled him into a Cambridge pastry shop and began loading up on eclairs.
And he sees me looking at him, and he nudges me and he goes, "Don't worry, kid. They're Pritikin eclairs."
O'Brien also recalled an exchange with Candy that continued to resonate with him, recalling, "I said to him, 'You know, Mr. Candy, I'm thinking I might try comedy.' His head whipped around, he looked me right in the eye, and he said, 'You don't try comedy. You do it or you don't do it.' And that hit me very powerfully." Another of John Candy's memorable bit parts came in Home Alone. He was Gus Polinski, who helps Kevin McAllister's mom get home to Chicago after flights are grounded. Candy's cameo, entirely improvised, was shot in a marathon 22-hour session. As O'Hara told Chicago Magazine in 2015, director Chris Columbus told me later how we couldn't use most of it. He laughed and said, "You're supposed to be looking for your kid, and you're just having a good time with these guys in a truck." Home Alone screenwriter John Hughes offered Candy a small portion of the film's profits as thanks, but he refused. Instead, he was paid just $414. When the movie eventually went on to rake in over $280 million at the box office, Candy came to regret his decision and reportedly harbored bitterness for years. As Columbus said in a 2020 interview with Business Insider, there was certainly a little resentment on John's part. "We did a movie together after that, Only the Lonely, and there were a couple times on set when he would make a cutting remark about Fox and what he was paid." While it was clear that fans absolutely adored watching Candy on screen, that was not a feeling that he shared. As his son, Chris Candy, revealed to The Hollywood Reporter, he put a lot of effort and love into everything he did, but he didn't like going to the premieres. He had a hard time watching the final product. Chris explained that the issue was more about watching with an audience, and insisted that his father had no issues critiquing his own performance in a private setting. As his daughter, Jen Candy Sullivan, added, he'd often enlist his wife to attend movie screenings so that she could then fill him in on how they went, saying, he would send mom to screenings and she would come back and tell him where the audience laughed, what they laughed at. In addition to his comedic gifts, John Candy is also remembered for his generosity. Stories abound illustrating his generous spirit, both to individuals and to charitable organizations. Candy's magnanimity is illustrated in a posthumous anecdote shared by an actor who had a bit part in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Interviewed by Vanity Fair, Troy Stevens, who had a one-line role as an antisocial trucker, recalled sitting in his hotel room watching TV when he received a phone call from Candy, who invited him to join him and some of the film's other actors to watch the Oscars. Stevens recalled cleaning himself up in the expectation he'd be joining the likes of director John Hughes and co-star Steve Martin. When he arrived, however, he discovered they weren't there. Going on to explain, "Who was there was everybody who was like me on the movie. He went through all the down-the-ladder actors and invited them all up to his suite. And then he got like $1,000 worth of room service."
Some coffee.
No.
Milk?
No.
Soda?
No.
Some tea?
No.
Lifesavers?
No.
Slurpee?
After the Oscars ended and the party broke up, Stevens tried to contribute $200 for all the food. Candy would not have it, with Stevens recalling, "And I'll remember this on my deathbed. John Candy said, 'Troy, that's been taken care of.'" When he passed away, Candy left behind a rare dramatic performance in Oliver Stone's JFK, portraying a shady New Orleans lawyer. As Candy's daughter, Jen Candy Sullivan, told The Hollywood Reporter, he put a lot of effort into that minor part, revealing, "He worked so hard on that. He had a dialect coach, and he worked night and day on that script. He was so worried about it, getting that accent down." That confirms the account of author Martin Nelman in his biography, Laughing on the Outside, The Life of John Candy. It was almost all for nothing, as director Oliver Stone decided to edit Candy out of the film, which devastated the actor upon hearing about it. The film's star, Kevin Costner, was so peeved that he fought hard until Stone eventually agreed to leave Candy's part intact. Nelman summed up the ordeal by writing, "In the end, Candy received a handwritten letter of apology from Stone." During one of the low periods of Candy's career, he was in a Calgary hotel preparing to start production on Cool Runnings when he contacted screenwriter Tommy Swerdlow, who was staying in the same hotel. Swerdlow recalled visiting Candy in his room. The actor had just come off a string of bombs and was desperate for a hit that would put him back on top. As Swerdlow recalled, Candy said, "I need this thing to be really good. Understand? I need it to be really good for me. I'm nobody. I'm nobody in this town. I'm nothing. I'm nobody. I'm dog boy. I'm dog boy in this town." Looking back on the encounter, Swerdlow observed that Candy was going through a kind of withdrawal after being knocked down a few rungs on the Hollywood ladder. As Swerdlow observed, poor guy was a mess. The big offers had dried up. Only someone who has experienced that kind love and adoration can so deeply feel its absence. As Swerdlow pointed out, Cool Runnings was released in October 1993, becoming a modest hit that earned largely positive reviews for Candy, who died just a few months later. Despite his stardom and apparent bravado, John Candy was desperately uncertain about his future in Hollywood. By the time he'd come to his final film, Wagons East, he'd been working non-stop for years. Candy confided to his Cool Runnings co-star Malik Yoba that he'd never once taken a vacation since he began making movies, with Yoba telling The Independent, he said it was because he was afraid he'd never work again. He was very insecure about his place in the Hollywood ecosystem. Cool Runnings director John Turteltaub confirmed Yoba's account, but insisted Candy's insecurities extended far deeper than Hollywood, explaining, "I know he had fears about his career and how he was perceived by people. His whole life, John hated not being liked. He was afraid of it on a personal and professional level." In fact, Turteltaub pointed out that underlying fear explained why Candy could never turn down anything for his fans, saying, "John had trouble doing that because he felt like a bad person if he didn't. That eats away at a person."